දැන් මාස 25ක ස්ථාවර තැන්පතු සඳහා 10.75ක අසම සම පොලියක් LB යසෙසුරු.
Tonight, on First at 9 this Thursday, the 5th of February 2026. Trailblazer. Sri Lanka's first female Auditor General assumes official duties. Maritime protest. Sri Lankan fishermen stage protest in front of the Indian High Commission against alleged attack by Indian Coast Guard. India denies assault allegations. Wetland protection. Archbishop of Colombo calls for action against illegal constructions threatening the Puturajavela wetlands. Hilltop Jewel. Nuwara featured in Agoda's Guide to Asia's must-visit hill stations.
Kalin baby so rupiyal 90කට. Kalin baby podi හැමෝටමයි.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9 on Sri Lanka's premium news provider, Derana News Channel. I'm Tarindu Mahendra joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. We begin with your top story this evening. The fishing community staged a demonstration in front of the Indian High Commission in Colombo today in protest of an attack on Sri Lankan fishermen allegedly inflicted by the Indian Coast Guard. The Indian High Commission, however, maintains that no such assault was inflicted by any Indian Navy or Coast Guard personnel.
12 Sri Lankan fishermen aboard 2 vessels were attacked within Sri Lankan territorial waters on the 29th and 30th of December last year, allegedly by the Indian Coast Guard. The vessels had departed from Dikovita Fisheries Harbour on the 3rd of December. The Sri Lanka Navy located the vessels and repatriated their crews, after which 9 fishermen were hospitalised. However, Sadunputa 4, which also departed from Dikovita alongside the 2 other vessels with a 6-man crew, could not be located. It was revealed that this vessel too had been attacked while sailing in international waters approximately 650 nautical miles off the Sri Lankan coast. However, the Navy yesterday located the missing vessel and repatriated the crew, all of whom were subsequently hospitalised. In this context, the Sri Lankan fishing community staged a demonstration in front of the Indian High Commission in Colombo in protest of the recent attack. The fishermen who faced the attack were also present at the site. Responding to the demonstration, the Indian High Commission in a statement claimed that it has ascertained and can confirm that no such assault had been inflicted by any Indian Navy or Coast Guard personnel. The High Commission went on to say that India has consistently maintained that a humanitarian approach should be adopted to fishermen's livelihood concerns and that the use of force should not be resorted to under any circumstances.
Central Finance Youth Aduwatawa!
Minister of Agriculture K.D. Lalkantha claims that island-wide protests by several parties are likely to be temporary. The minister's remarks came against a backdrop where fishermen from Puttalam staged a demonstration in front of the President's office demanding that the government withdraw the ban on seine net fishing using tractor winches. The protest continued despite meetings with officials as demonstrators claimed that the government's response was unsatisfactory.
Although fishermen in many areas across the island have long engaged in seine net fishing using tractor winches, the method was banned after the incumbent government came to power. Protests were staged in several areas of the island today, demanding that the ban be lifted. Against this backdrop, net fishermen from several areas, including Mullaitivu and Kokile, gathered in front of the Presidential Secretariat today, demanding that the ban on tractor winches be lifted. 5 protesters were granted a meeting at the Presidential Secretariat. Accordingly, the fishermen continued the protest. In contrast to the protests in Kokile, small-scale fishermen in the Irunavile area are requesting the president to continue enforcing the ban on winches, citing severe environmental damage caused by their use. In a separate development, another protest was staged in front of the President's office today, demanding that the children of academic and non-academic staff members who have served in national schools for 3 years be admitted to their respective schools. The privilege, which was in effect for several years, was discontinued from 2025. Later, several protesters held discussions with 3 assistant secretaries to the President, after which the protest dispersed based on assurances received. Against this backdrop, Agriculture Minister K.D. Laukantha responded to the ongoing agitations and protests.
රැලි ආවොත් මොකද වෙන්නේ? රැලි ආපහු යනවා. වෛද්‍යරුන්ගේ රැල්ලත් වැල්ලේ වැදිලා විරලේ වැදිලා ආපහු යයි. මදි වගේද? ටිකක් සරමත්.
Opposition parties accuse the government of diminishing the prestige of the military by excluding military equipment from this year's National Independence Day parade. They contend that these actions are intended to appease external parties. Meanwhile, a group of Tamil residents in the United Kingdom staged a protest outside the Sri Lankan High Commission in London, voicing opposition against Independence Day celebrations.
Samudika Jayaratne, who was appointed Sri Lanka's 42nd Auditor General, received her letter of appointment from Secretary to the President, Dr. Nandika Sanat Kumanayaka, at the Presidential Secretariat today. Subsequently, the newly appointed Auditor General took the oath of secrecy before Speaker of Parliament, Dr. Jagat Vikramaratne. She was administered the oath of secrecy in accordance with Section 9 of the National Audit Act No. 19 of 2018 in her capacity as Auditor General of the National Audit Office and Chairperson of the Audit Service Commission. Thereafter, the new Auditor General assumed duties at the National Audit Office in Battaramulla. Jayaratne, who previously served as Senior Deputy Auditor General, is Sri Lanka's first female Auditor General. Late in the afternoon, a ceremony was held to welcome the newly appointed Auditor General, with former Auditor Generals in attendance. This is a challenging period which carries many responsibilities. The new Auditor General has been vested with powers under the new Act which were not vested in us. The Auditor General's responsibility is to execute her duties in line with these powers. These crucial responsibilities can only be fulfilled with everyone's support, setting aside previous internal issues. The damage caused by the impure alliance that emerged within this institution is quite difficult to reverse. I work to weaken those elements and reduce their influence. Unfortunately, over the past 7 years, they were nurtured and strengthened and appointed to key positions. The new Auditor General must understand that this role is not a bed of roses. We will provide the necessary support. Although this department didn't accept my support for the last 7 years, the work I mentioned must be begin from tomorrow itself. Otherwise, this impure alliance will sabotage our efforts.
I wish to make it clear that I will take action against anyone who interferes with the execution of my duties. 8 years is a long time. Let us work together to move forward positively under one agenda.
Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith, proposes the establishment of a Muthurajavela Development Authority to protect the Muthurajavela wetlands. Joining a discussion at the Archbishop's residence, the Cardinal emphasized that illegal constructions within the Muthurajavela wetlands will have serious long-term effects, such as the disastrous floods in Gampaha.
A discussion focused on the preservation of the Muthurajavela wetland was held at the Archbishop's residence under the patronage of Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith. Chairman of the Gampaha District Coordination Committee, Deputy Minister Mahinda Jayasinghe, was also in attendance alongside several government officials. Gampaha town was flooded twice, a never-before-seen development. The reason for this is Muthurajavela. The Muthurajavela region is like a lung. Nature is one collective system. Therefore, interference can have terrible consequences. This region has been exploited in the last 50 to 60 years with illegal landfills and constructions, and it continues to worsen. Such development projects are even underway in the area gazetted for conservation. The government's policy of unlawfully authorizing these constructions is leading Muthurajavela towards destruction. Therefore, I propose the establishment of a Muthurajavela Development Authority, legally empowered to preserve Muthurajavela and its surrounding motorways. By law, no landfills should be permitted within Muthurajavela without the express permission of this authority. An expert committee was established following discussions on Muthurajavela during the Gampaha District Coordination Committee meeting last August. We received its report by the end of last month and it was presented to the District Coordination Committee on the 30th. 2 facts were emphasized. One is that the report should be submitted to the Ministry of Environment. Therefore, a meeting has been scheduled with the Ministry of Environment for the 17th to discuss the future proceedings concerning the report.
Now, Minister of Environment Dr. Dhammika Patamandi says the government will permit the Ambuluava cable car project to resume if complaints against it are unfounded. The minister made these remarks during a recent tour of inspection in Ambuluava.
The Ambuluava Tower in Gampula is one of Sri Lanka's most scenic tourist destinations. However, due to the impact of Cyclone Ditwa, certain areas of the Ambuluava mountain range face the threat of landslides. Considering the precarious situation, the Ministry of Environment instructed the Central Environmental Authority to suspend all construction on the mountain range pending a comprehensive risk assessment. As the suspension continues, a group of officials, including Minister of Environment Dr. Dhammika Patamandi, engaged in a tour of inspection in the area yesterday.
We received a number of complaints regarding Ambuluava. Several national papers, power parliamentarians and various civil society organizations informed us of the matter. That was the basis for our intervention, not finding fault to suspend the cable car project or investments. If the objections are invalid, we will not act on them. However, if there is a scientific basis, we will take appropriate action. That is why the project was suspended for some time. If these concerns are unjustified, we will allow the project to continue. Certain groups attempted to insinuate that the Ambuluava mountain faced landslides due to the cable car project. As the minister observed, the cable car operate above ground and pylons are only installed at 3 locations. The minister witnessed that there were no signs of landslides in any of these 3 locations. Cyclone Ditwa was a test of the quality of our conservation efforts. Following the cyclone, landslides occurred in many surrounding areas except Ambuluava. In no way we will prevent locals or tourists from visiting here.
Welcome back to First at 9. Now, the special exposition of the sacred Devanimori relics of Lord Buddha brought to Sri Lanka from the Indian state of Gujarat commenced at 6 a.m. today at the Gangarame temple in Colombo. Devotees will have the opportunity to venerate these sacred relics until February 11th.
The sacred relics of Lord Buddha, unearthed at the historic Devanimori site in Gujarat, arrived in Sri Lanka yesterday and were enshrined at the Gangarame temple in Hunupitiya. From 6 a.m. today, Sri Lankan devotees were granted the opportunity to venerate the sacred relics. This is the first time the Devanimori relics have travelled out of India. Devotees from across the country are gathering at the Gangarame temple to witness and venerate the sacred relics. Special security arrangements have been made in and around the temple for the duration of the exposition. In addition, a 24-hour Dansala has been organized to provide refreshments for devotees. Against this backdrop, Sri Lanka Railways implemented special railway services from Avisavella, Rambukkana and Aluthgama to Colombo Fort from today to facilitate devotees visiting the exposition. Meanwhile, to manage traffic flow during the pilgrimage, Sri Lanka Police imposed temporary road closures around the temple premises. Access will be restricted at several junctions, including those connecting Jinaratanamawatha from Hunupitiya Vava Road junction towards the temple, Jinaratanamawatha from Lake Crescent junction towards the temple, Park Street from Jinaratanamawatha junction towards the temple, and Staple Street from Muttaya Road junction. To further assist devotees, multiple parking areas are being provided free of charge. These include the Port City parking lot, the parking area near Shangri-La Hotel, the parking area at the old MOD grounds, the Viharamadevi Park, the vacant land near the old Satusa premises near Colombo City Centre, and the parking lots on FR Senanayaka Mawatha, Dhanapala Mawatha, Vauxhall Street and School Road. The sacred relics are open for veneration continuously until 7 a.m. on the 11th of February.
A large number of devotees clad in traditional white attire are arriving at the temple to pay reverence to the sacred relics. Arrangements have been made to ensure that devotees are able to venerate the relics with ease without having to endure prolonged waiting in queues. The cooperation of the general public is sincerely appreciated in supporting fellow devotees during this period. All are respectfully invited to venerate these sacred relics and partake in the accumulation of immense spiritual merit.
Minister of Transport Bimal Ratnayake revealed that a Gazette notification has been issued legalizing the transfer of passenger transport permits to third parties. Speaking at a press briefing today, the minister stated that the new regulations will come into effect from today. There was no legal mechanism to transfer permits issued to private passenger services to a third party. As a result, when bus owners either left the business or switched to another industry, they transferred ownership of their buses via semi-legal or in some cases illegal means. This ultimately resulted in a lack of discipline within the industry, since the passenger transport permit is issued to one party while the business is actually operated by a different party. Therefore, even when a private individual purchased a bus, they had to seek a passenger transport permit issued to another party. In this context, private bus owners associations during recent discussions called for the implementation of a legal mechanism to transfer the ownership of buses to a third party. Accordingly, the National Transport Commission Act was amended, thereby vesting us with the power to draft new regulations. Pursuant to the new powers, a Gazette notification was issued pertaining to the transfer of ownership of private passenger services to a third party. This does not increase the number of buses in operation but allows the legal transfer of ownership of buses. However, there are several conditions to be fulfilled by the party that acquires the vehicle. Minister of Education, Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuri assures that no school has been authorised to collect funds from parents to purchase smart boards for classrooms. She made this statement in Parliament today in response to a question raised by the opposition leader.
The levy charge per 750 litre special arak bottle produced in Sri Lanka with an alcohol volume of 33.5% is 1,832 rupees. About a year ago, Minister Nalinda Jayatissa stated that the previous regime had issued approximately 340 liquor licenses illegally. Are these licenses truly illegal and will they continue to operate? The previous government issued these licenses according to regulations. The issue lies in granting them to their allies during an election period. There is a trend of schools collecting funds to purchase televisions and smart boards. I would like to ask the ministry to pay attention to this and provide them to the schools directly.
කිසිසේත්ම පාසල් මට්ටමින් දෙමව්පියන්ගෙන් මුදල් එකතු කිරීමට කිසිම අවශ්‍යතාවයක් නැහැ. ඒක කරනවා නම් වහාම නවත්තන්න කියලා මම මේ ප්‍රසිද්ධියේ කියනවා. මොකෝ අපි ස්මාර්ට් බෝඩ් ද්විතීක පාසල් සියල්ලටම බෙදා දීමේ වැඩපිළිවෙල දැන් ආරම්භ කරලා තියෙන්නේ. දැන් මෙතුමිය කිව්වා පාසල් පද්ධතියේ.
The Prime Minister stated that all schools should stop collecting money for smart boards. Are you prepared to communicate this through an official circular?
අමාත්‍යාංශයේ ලේකම්තුමා නිකුත් කරලා තියෙනවා නියෝගයක්. එහෙම එකතු කරන්න එපා කියලා.
දැන් නියෝජ්‍ය ලේකම්තුමා අල්ලස් කොමිසමට පැමිණිල්ලක් ලබා
The Deputy General Secretary filed a complaint with the Bribery Commission. Now the Personal Secretary of the Speaker has requested details of this complaint from the General Secretary of Parliament through a letter. According to the Bribery Act, this is a punishable offence. The Bribery Commission should conduct a full investigation.
මේ අල්ලස් කොමිසම මේ ගැන පරීක්ෂණයක් කරන්න. මම දැක්ක ඔබ එක පුද්ගලයෙක් එක අමාත්‍යවරයෙක්ද මන්ත්‍රීවරයෙක්ද මන් දන්නේ.
A member of the government party has stated that Independence Day will not showcase war equipment obtained on credit. Yet you are comfortable managing 1,700 cabs purchased on credit. In the past, you even claimed that the clothes you wear were gifts from others. That is acceptable. However, you are ashamed to showcase the war equipment and vehicles of the Triforces that were used to defeat terrorism.
ලෝකෙට පෙන්නන ලැජ්ජයි. පුදුම ආණ්ඩුවක් නේ. මෙතන දැන් කැමර දුන්න මහත්තයට.
To MP Namal, we can only say that we are working according to the mandate we were given. Your father and uncles controlled the country for a long time. Some of your uncles are still freely roaming, but legal actions are now underway. We ask him to encourage his uncles to come forward and support the rule of law.
Opposition parties accuse the government of diminishing the prestige of the military by excluding military equipment from this year's National Independence Day parade. They contend that these actions are intended to appease external parties. Meanwhile, a group of Tamil residents in the United Kingdom staged a protest outside the Sri Lankan High Commission in London, voicing opposition against Independence Day celebrations.
As Sri Lanka celebrated the 78th National Independence Day yesterday, a group of Tamils residing in the United Kingdom staged a protest in front of the Sri Lankan High Commission in London, expressing opposition to the country's Independence Day celebrations. The demonstrators described the day as a black day for the Tamil community. They proceeded to march towards Downing Street, the official residence of the British Prime Minister, carrying placards critical of the Sri Lankan government before concluding their protest. Meanwhile, several political figures shared their perspective on the 78th National Independence Day celebration. During previous Independence Day celebrations, the strength and the pride of our Triforces were prominently showcased. However, this time some claim that such a display was not possible because the weapons were obtained on credit. If that is the case, what about the vehicles used by the President and other ministers to arrive at the ceremony? Those vehicles too were acquired on credit. By that logic, should they not have arrived at the Independence Day celebration on foot? What we are witnessing now is a deliberate attempt to foster resentment towards our Triforces. The dignity and stature of our armed forces are being systematically diminished. This was clearly reflected in the manner in which they were introduced during the Independence Day ceremony. The presenter appeared poised to say war heroes, but after a brief pause referred to them as heroic soldiers. This corrupt government, which harbors hostility towards the nation, its armed forces and its culture values, chooses to reduce our war heroes to the label of mere soldiers. If that's the case, they should rename their commemoration from Commemoration of November Heroes to Commemoration of November Soldiers. Same to the Commemoration of April Soldiers. How can they be honoured as heroes while our own soldiers are denied their recognition? The Minister of Public Administration stated that the display of weapons obtained on credit is not dignified. However, during the Independence Day celebrations, our war heroes were denied the respect they rightfully deserved. This conduct clearly suggests that the government is following the agenda of an external party. The presenter's conscience knows the weight and prestige carried by the term war heroes. However, they appear determined to act in accordance with a predetermined agenda. In his address, the president pledged to bring an end to racism, a commitment that is indeed commendable. However, such words must be matched with action. In that spirit, measures should be taken against those who organized protest in the north yesterday, as their action amounted to an attempt to incite racial discord. I believe the actions of the government have been designed to appease and impress the diaspora. In doing so, they have unintentionally encouraged certain segments of youth who continue to harbour aspiration of an Islamist state. We strongly urge the government not to govern as a puppet of the diaspora. The people did not grant a 2/3 majority for the country to be led in this manner. In the course of the execution of our duties, shortcomings may arise. However, none of these are the result of deliberate intent. We have been entrusted with the responsibility of guiding and developing this nation, and we remain committed to fulfilling that trust. Despite the numerous criticisms leveled by the defeated opposition and other political parties, the general public remains aware that the nation was celebrated in a dignified and a commendable manner.
Latest in the world of business coming up after this short commercial break. Welcome back to First at 9. Now, global digital travel website Agoda has included Nuwara on its latest list of must-visit hill stations in Asia. The website describes Nuwara as being famous for its tea plantations and cool climate, referring to the town as Little England. Agoda invites tourists to have an enjoyable experience exploring the luscious tea plantations and colonial-era buildings. In addition to Nuwara, Agoda has also included India's mountainous regions, Shimla and Munnar, and Malaysia's Cameron Highlands. Also on the list are Vietnam's Sapa Highlands, the French colonial heritage town of Dalat, Indonesia's Bandung region, and Bhutan's capital Thimphu. Now, in a stock update, the Colombo Bourse closed in positive territory today, resulted by price gains in counters such as John Keells Holdings, Sampath Bank and Dialog Asiata. The benchmark All Share Price Index climbed 0.15% to settle at 23,768.99 points. Meanwhile, the more liquid S&P Sri Lanka 20 also increased by 0.08% to end the day at 6,602.81. Market turnover crossed 11.1 billion rupees. The capital goods sector was the top contributor to turnover, while the banking sector was the second highest contributor. Foreigners remained active, closing as net sellers. And with that, here's a look at today's exchange rates. That's all for tonight from First at 9. For the latest developments around the clock, stay in touch with Auditor General, the Sri Lankan news brand of international excellence. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.